let's talk about all the joins we've learned so far and then put them together with examples so we can actually understand them more in depth. Again, we're using this for MySQL, so they're specific to that. So far, we have learned that there are multiple joins. These are natural joins, Cartesian or cross join, outer join, which includes left join, right join, full join, which we talked about that in MySQL. Full join isn't necessarily possible, but there's a way to go around it where you can combine left join and right join with the use of union. And then moving on, we learned about inner join and self join. So the one thing I want you to get out of this slide is that whenever you're using an outer, inner, and self join, you need that on clause. You need to specify which columns you're trying to match the two tables with. However, whenever you're using natural or cross join, you don't necessarily need that on clause. And when we go into the examples, you're going to find out why. So for the examples that I'm going to go through, they're from this data set if you want to copy paste them, and I'm going to provide it to you as well. But bottom line is that you'll get these tables, including enrollments, classes, and students. So we're going to go through the joins in order, and then that way you can see the differences. So let's start with outer join. For outer join, when we're talking specifically left join, it returns all the rows from the left table, and that's your table 1, and only the matching rows from the table 2 or the right table. And if there are no matching rows from the right table, then the null value will be returned. Left and right joins are very similar, it's just the ordering of the tables are different. So let's go through this example. In this example, I'm using 2 joins. So what that means is that I'm doing a join first on table 1 and table 2, and then the result of that, I'm going to go sort of match it to another table, another additional table. In order to do these, we're going to break it down for you to better understand it. So let's break it to the first join. So the first join, we're saying select student name and class name, which student name comes from students and class name comes from classes table. Then do a left join, so all the stuff from table 1, which in this case are students, is table 1, and everything that matches between the table 1 and table 2, which in this case table 2's enrollments. And then I'm giving a condition that I want the student IDs to match. But because student ID is exactly the same, the naming is the same from 2 different tables, I need to specify which table I'm talking about. So in this case, I'm talking about students. In this case, I'm talking about enrollments. So for this, if you think about it, we are getting this. We're getting the student IDs to match. So here, I know that student ID 1 is John Doe, and I know student ID 2 is Jane Doe. So once I've done this, I need to do the second part of the join where I'm going to actually combine the class ID to get the class name. This pink thing is that's how I like to see it. So I get student ID, just follow the student ID. So if I were doing student ID, match the student ID, retrieve the student name, then match the class ID to retrieve the class name. That's how I would go about it. But let's add the second join clause, which is enrollments, and again enrollments and classes. So in this case, I'm matching the class's ID to get the class name. So I already know that student ID 1 was John Doe, and I know class ID matches, so Math 101, I have that here. Then moving forward, again, I have student ID 1, which again, I know it's John Doe, where class ID is 102 this time, and 102 is English 101, and I have that here. Moving on, then I have student ID 2, which is Jane Doe, and then class ID 102, and then 102, when I match it, it's English 101. So basically what I got is everything here 3 rows because that's what I was looking for, and then matched it to get the class name and the student name. Alright, so let's say if I were to do the same thing, the same table, but this time I'm just using the students and enrollments table and matching the student IDs to get the students, student name as well as the class ID. So again, students is my table 1, so I'm getting everything from this table and whatever matches between the two. So for this example, I'm gonna get obviously student ID 1 is John Doe, and I know class ID is 101. Student ID 1, again, I know it's John Doe, class ID is 102. Student ID 2, I know it's Jane Doe, and with the class ID of 102. But let's assume, so this is the hypothetical, and this is not in that data set. Let's assume we had a student ID 5, and that was Janice Doe. So we've already done all of that. John Doe 101, John Doe 102, Jane Doe 102. But this time, again, we want everything from students and whatever matches between the two, which in this case, Janice Doe is from this table. So I want to bring her here. But again, because there's no student ID 5 in this table, this will be null value. Alright, so when we're talking about a right join, it's literally the same thing as left join, but on the opposite side. So if we said table 1, everything from table 1, now this time we're saying everything from table 2 and whatever the commonality between the tables are. Now let's talk about full join, which again, full join also known as the full outer join. It's typically a left join and a right join with union together, just because in MySQL normally they don't use full join. That's all you need to know. Alright, let's talk about inner join. Inner join returns only the matching rows from both table based on the join condition specified on the on clause. So anything between table 1 and table 2. So going back to our same example of the tables, in this case, again, I have 2 inner joins. So I'm going to split it and focus on one of them at a time. So in this case, I'm getting students and enrollment. So I'm only focusing on these 2 tables, and I'm matching them by student ID. And again, because they're from different table but same column name, I'm just going to specify which table I'm returning it from. And the result of it, which will be sort of here, the result of it will try to go and do a second inner join with table 2. So let's put all of it together. So the first part, we were saying that student ID 1, when we match it, we know it's John Doe, and student ID number 2, when we match it, we know it's Jane Doe. So now putting the entire thing together, this should be red, not that. It would be that student ID 1 was John Doe, but we also know the class ID was 101, so it's math 101 for him. Again, we have student ID 1, when we match it to student ID, again, it's still John Doe, and then we're matching it to class ID 102, which in this case is English 101. And again, student ID 2, Jane Doe, class ID 102, 102 is still English 101. So I hope this makes sense. If it doesn't, maybe pause this video a little bit and just go over it by yourself. Now let's talk about natural join. A lot of you are confused what the difference between an inner join and a natural join is. We're going to fully understand it from this example. So as you remember, we said that inner join is between the 2 tables. Natural join is sort of like, there's no in between. It can be anywhere from table 1 and table 2. So natural join returns only the matching rows from both tables based on the columns with the same name in both tables. So what that means, in in comparison to the inner join, while inner and outer join use the on clause, and they're saying like inner join where we want any value here. The natural join doesn't need the on clause because it relies on the column names to be exactly written the same way, same grammar, same everything. And it doesn't have to be in the middle, it can be anywhere. I think this visualization might be a better representation. So for this example, in this natural join, again, we're doing two natural joins. And if you remember, we do the first natural join, which will be table 1 to table 2. So table 1 to table 2. The result of it will go to table 2 of the second join clause. So notice how they're matching colors, which means the column name, for example, in this table and this table match. And that's why there's a join coming to it. So you're not specifically, it sort of automatically understands which rows match, which column names match, and bring it together. You don't need that on clause to tell it, hey, match it from student ID to student ID. So there's like pros and cons of using this, and we're gonna go through this example for you to better understand it. And then we'll figure out why you get a different result by doing a natural join versus an inner join, even though they're doing the exact same thing in a sense, or they're trying to do the exact same thing. So let's go through the first natural join. Again, we're doing student ID. We're using students table and enrollments table, and automatically it knows that it's going to look through all the columns from these two tables and realizes which columns match. In this case, it understands its student ID. That's why it matches, and then it will go and do the same second thing. And since we're taking the student name, again, we know one student ID is John Doe, and so on. So let's add the second natural join. In the second natural join, we are again matching the class ID, and it knows it automatically because my bad, that should have been C, lowercase c, but it's because they're exactly the same. So in this case, note that even though it matched the class ID and student ID, this time we're getting John Doe, which made sense because student ID 1 is John Doe, class ID 101 is Math 101, right? However, this time it's not gonna look at the second student ID. It's just gonna remove it, and it's gonna go directly to Jane Doe, which is 102. Student ID 2, we know it's Jane 2, and then class ID is 102, we get English 101. So note that it sort of skipped one of them. So John Doe is rolled in two classes, Math 101 and English 101. However, the natural join only returns the row where the major of the student matches the major of the class that they're enrolled in, which is only Math 101 in this case. So if you remember how I said the natural join automatically joins all the columns that have the same name, even though we never said anything about previously when we're talking about inner join, we didn't talk about anything about the major. But note that major also matches here, right? So because it matches it sort of removes it automatically. For you to better understand this, I highly suggest just going through this example and using a select everything clause, and just do the first join, and then again use select everything clause, just have the second join, just putting them all little by little to fully understand it. So I guess what I'm trying to say, that the biggest difference between natural and inner join is that natural join might do some work in the background that you might not notice. So because there's no on clause, it automatically matches all the columns that are similar. Even though you might not necessarily need that, it will do it. However, inner join, it will be specific, explicitly depend on what you tell it to do. So depending on what data set you're trying to work with, and whether there's replication or there is no replication, you will do that. I hope this makes sense, and we're going to go over it in the class again. But again, just take a pause, read through this. I highly suggest, again, doing these examples by yourself. The script is there for you to copy paste. I think that's the best way that you will understand it. So if you were to compare them, ignore the red part of it. Note that when you did the natural join, you only got 2 results. While you did the inner join, even though it was literally similar, the same, because you used that on clause, it only matched it for that on clause. It didn't care about the matching it to the major, and it therefore produces 3 rows. So again, take a minute, go through it. Yeah, as I mentioned, natural join might do more than you ask it to do. All right, let's move on to Cartesian or cross join. I think this one is the easiest out of all of them. It really returns the products of the 2 tables, which includes all the possibilities and the combinations. So as you remember, this is a second join that doesn't require an on clause, because it doesn't matter. You're not trying to match it by whatever. All you're telling it to do is you're saying select student name and class name. So pick these 2 columns from these 2 different tables and just crisscross match them, all of them. So go John Doe, Math 101, English 101, History 101, and then go to Jane Doe, Math 101, English 101, History 101. So this one is super straightforward. So yeah, in the cross join, the result setting includes every possible combination of rows from both tables, regardless of whether the columns have matching values or not. So we're not focusing on whether this student ID matches this student ID or this class ID matches this class ID. So that's what it means. We're just focusing on pretty much taking these 2 columns out and like doing the cross join on them. All right, last one is the self join. So self join is a regular join, but the table is joined with itself. So using an inner join or outer join, depending on what you require, you can use them to do the self join. So this is another hypothetical example. So assume I have this orders table with order ID, customer ID, product, and date ordered. And all I'm trying to do is select 01. So I'm shortening it, giving a nickname in a sense, so I can distinguish my tables, table 1 and table 2. So again, because self-join is using the same table twice, you need to rename them separately, or else it will get super confused. So we're saying select customer ID from orders 1 or table 1, and then products. So I'm taking products and I'm doing it as first purchase. So products from table 1 as first purchase. Now table 2, products as second purchase. So I'm picking this column and doing renaming it as first purchase from the first table and the second purchase from the second table. Then I do something date differ. You haven't seen this, but what it means is basically looks at the date and just look at the difference. Gives it a value of the difference between those 2 dates. So I'm doing this, and I'm giving it days between purchase, and I'm doing from orders 01, which again, that was the nickname I gave it to, and then joining it to orders 02. So this is my table 1, table 2. I'm joining it on customer ID, and I'm saying that order ID for order 1 should be less than order ID from order to table. So what I get out of it is sort of what I'm trying to ask this table is to give me the customer's ID, first purchase and second purchase, and the days between the purchase. We already said the calculation between the days purchase is from first purchase and the second purchase, so date ordered and date order, which I renamed them. And then I'm also telling it to match it to the customer ID and make sure that the order ID, it's always one less. So the second table, which is our second purchase, should be higher than our table 1. And it's sort of telling it, okay, how many days did it take from the person who bought iPhone to buy an iPad. So customer ID 101, it took it 59 days to purchase 59 days between their first purchase, which was the iPhone, to second purchase, which was the iPad, and so on. So this is just an example, again, hypothetical example, just to showcase you why you would want to use a self join. Again, I highly suggest you practice these, play around with them, change a few things, see what works and what doesn't work. I think that's the best way to learn. And I also wanted to show this as an example if you were ever curious. I think these ones, what they highlight is sort of this concept that you could do like where clause, where if you want it to be null or not null. So it's just some of them have this where clause, and that's something new, and I thought it would be interesting for you to showcase. If you want to learn more about it, you can definitely go through the link. I hope this helped. Let me know if it doesn't, and then we'll talk about it.